Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome, folks. The Hungry Gamer is back with another Protospiel interview, this time with Luke Laurie, the designer of Dwellings of Eldervale, which blew up on Kickstarter, I think it was about a month or so ago. And Luke's agreed to talk to us a little bit, not just about his game, but about this idea of the Protospiel and going to conventions and testing games. So, Luke, I would love to know how much coming to conventions and going to Protospiels and testing with regular people changed Dwellings from where it started.
Well, I love that you said regular people, because really it is all about the people, and we're all regular people. And I was definitely a regular, ordinary person until I got lots of exposure to all of the great things that happen at these conventions, all of the contact that I had with experienced designers and people who really knew how to play test and design and so on. And so really, you can spend all your time doing research, reading books, going online, and getting on social media forums and asking questions about game design and doing your own independent work, but nothing quite compares to that face-to-face interaction that you'll have at great game design events. So about 6 years ago, I started running these events. I didn't invent the idea of a Protospiel, but I adopted the concept so that the conventions in the San Francisco Bay Area would have Protospiels inside a traditional game convention. So we're in one right now, and you may or may not hear it, but I'm surrounded by the voices of people play testing, socializing, and talking about the industry and various other things related to game making at this very moment. And so throughout the weekend, and we're here at Pacificon in Santa Clara, we have for the last 6 years at these various conventions, we have a designated room that focuses on unpublished prototypes at all stages. So these are games that they could be brand new inceptions that people just showed up with that they had made that very same week. In some cases, these are games that people have worked on for years. Sometimes these are games where a game like Dwellings of Eldervale, where it's already funded on Kickstarter, and we're in those final stages of tinkering, of development, before this game really hits the market. So by bringing our games into the public and inviting a whole bunch of the great designers, we invite people from everywhere, but a lot of the folks here from San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, Sacramento, and elsewhere. So these folks bring with them this whole wealth of knowledge. They bring their criticisms, they bring their troubleshooting, and it's kind of this incredible environment. I almost feel like we're in some kind of heyday where there's so many great designers coming out of here, and folks that I met just a couple of years ago at these events. They'd show up, they'd try the play testing, they'd be interested in putting their own games together, and now they're published designers, and it's great to watch the level of success.
So one thing I've noticed as I've been testing lots of games, and here with my brother who's testing his own, is you get so much feedback. How do you decide, oh, that's a good idea, but maybe not for my game, versus I'm going to try that, I don't know, and then putting aside your own feelings if someone's like, that doesn't work?
So, you don't always put aside your own feelings. There is a benefit to getting a toughened skin to not take things personally. It's important, and we try to also convey to the playtesters kind of these appropriate strategies and approaches to playtesting where you're not making it personal. You're making it productive. That said, you want the feedback that you get to be entirely honest. You want it to be clear, and you really don't want people to hold punches, because whatever they hold back from criticizing is what the market's going to end up criticizing in the long run. So it's better to hear about it before you pitch your game to a publisher, or if it's already with a publisher, it's better to hear about it before that game hits the market. So in these environments, we kind of try to foster a productive, I wouldn't call it professional, but it's an environment where you have this level of respect for the work that's being done, even when the work fails. And the acknowledgement that the vast majority of the work that we do does fail. And for example, I was just having a conversation recently where I was doing the math and figuring out that basically about 10% of the games that I have spent a lot of time on developing really have become publishable works. Only about 10%.
And talking about the Dwellings a little bit, can you share anything that in maybe the early phases that you were getting tested and you thought was a great idea and then has gone completely the way of the dodo or maybe morphed because of play testing?
That's interesting because a lot of times when we talk about a product that's something that we're trying to push and get everybody involved in, we talk about what works about the game and how great it is, and not like the things where we tried in that direction and failed, or that we had to overcome kind of a preconception and then abandon it. I'll give you an example of one that I can think of offhand. And initially the idea of monsters in this game, and there are monsters that roam around that are miniatures in the published version of Dwellings of Eldervale. These monsters, originally the idea was that they'd all belong to the players, or they could come into play in control of the players based on cards that they'd acquired. So instead what we have is the monsters have become more of an external threat in that they roam around the board depending on the player's movements. They potentially interfere with the things that you're trying to do. They do battle with you. They affect the environment with some kinds of special abilities. And on rare circumstances, you can take control of them with some very particular and special powers. But by default, they're not something that are entirely within control of the players. Because we find it's more of a sense of adventure when there's this external threat, this thing where all of the players are playing against each other. They're competing to try to do things better. But at the same time, there's this other. There's this thing that they have to deal with and keep in their minds, and it's going to potentially interfere with their attempts to progress. Another example of something that we abandoned at one point was this idea that the cards, the various tableau cards that players acquire in the game, at one point these cards were all shuffled into a single deck. I'm a fan of games that are really easy to set up and have that, shuffle the deck, play. And what we found was there was just some inherent imbalance if the cards are randomized, because they have to be associated with certain elemental powers in the game. And so by having set cards in specific decks by element, ensuring that all of the elements in the game are available, turned out to be really important for balancing the game and making it so that your early choices don't inherently hamper your later choices in the game.
And just the last two questions. If there's someone watching this who thinks, I've been trying to get someone to test my games, I want to do this, how do they get involved with a Protospiel, at least in the Bay Area? Because I know that's what you know.
Yeah, so there's a few different events. My recommendation is for your very first event to do one of two things. To attend one of the Protospiels that are inside the conventions. So, for example, this last year we had one in Pacificon here in Santa Clara, and we had one in KublaCon, which is technically Burlingame, but it's considered near the San Francisco airport. So those conventions have created an in-house Protospiel. Now, if you're into gaming and you kind of want to kind of inch your way into the idea that you might become a game maker, then you should walk into these events. You're a welcome participant at these events. We want to meet you. We want to hang out with you. We want you to play our games and be a participant as a play tester. Watch what these other designers are making. Look at it and see, is this, first of all, are you comfortable in this environment? And a lot of folks have been, and we've brought in all kinds of new people into this world, so to speak. A lot of us have become friends. We really promote and encourage diversity. We're trying to get more women. We're trying to get more people of color. We're trying to get more LGBT representation in the design community. And so we pull people in. We want people to come in. We want them to stay. And we're not really that intimidating a bunch. And so even if your game is absolutely terrible, and a lot of them will be, we're still going to help you out. We're still going to try it. You're still going to learn some things. We'll run some seminars and sessions that you can show up. You can ask questions. So many of the folks here, and I'm glancing around the room with like particular faces that I'm looking at. They will talk to you. They'll probably talk to you more than you want to hear about how to do this and how to get into the industry. And we don't mind the competition. We don't mind that there are more folks joining the industry. We don't mind that there are more people making great games because we want to play our games. We're all gamers at heart, and more great games makes the hobby better. So we don't feel like we've reached some kind of saturation limit. Another approach is to go to the, it's called the San Jose Protospiel. I believe it's at the Game Castle in Mountain View.
Yeah.
And that event is a little different, where particular designers and game makers and publishers, they've actually reserved particular tables. And so they have games that you can go to those particular tables. And so when you show up there, you're 100% a playtester. You wouldn't be expected to like come off the street with your prototype at those events. At these events, the Protospiels inside the cons, we tend to have lots of good table space, comfortable environment. We've got food and drinks and socializing as part of it too. And really, everybody's welcome, and it's a great time.
And so, just my last question was, thank you for bearing with me so long, late at night, is for anybody who just biffed and missed the Dwellings Kickstarter, can they get a copy? If so, how do they do it?
So, because I'm not the publisher, I'm not the super expert, but my understanding is that you go to if you go to the dwellingsofeldervale.com website, there's an instruction, and I think currently you can always go there to get the instruction. If the instruction changes, that instruction will be there. So go to dwellingsofeldervale.com, and I think right now they're looking at the option of opening up late pledges, but you have to send an email to say that you're interested in that to get involved. But Dwellings of Eldervale, I'm pretty sure the ship date for the Kickstarter is expected in May. As Kickstarters go, those are always estimates, but sometime next year, Dwellings of Eldervale will be a done and finished product, and it's going to be out there for people to play, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for taking the time, and everyone, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.